Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fun-filled Foreign Policy Thursday, where we're not, well, I guess we're going to talk a little foreign policy. We're going to talk the COVID economy globally. We're not going to look at it from strictly an American lens. Let me bring in my co-host, my homie, my dog, coming all the way live from Miami, Florida, Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles.
I'm excited for today for a plethora of reasons. Number one, it's always a fun show when the entire foreign policy crew is in here, especially when we have our guest Maria Repnikova on. And also, allegedly, if everything's working right, we're able to stream from multiple accounts. So this show should be getting out to hella, as we say in the Bay Area, people. So shall we bring in our co-host?
Let's chow.
He is a professor. He is a friend. He is a gamer. And he's a dad. He is Mean Gene Bajlan.
Greetings, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe, making sure you're wearing your masks and being vaccinated. Well, where I am, it's pretty necessary. We're in COVID Central here in Springfield. So it's great to be with you tonight. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this week's episode. It's a really interesting topic.
You are kind of in the epicenter of COVID. I was literally watching a news program and they were talking about Springfield, Missouri being the epicenter of this latest outbreak. We definitely talk about it here and there, and we have our private conversations. So we always get a little worried knowing that you're out there in the world.
Well, I'm staying in the house. I'm keeping away from people and avoiding getting coughed on. I think that's like, as much as possible, avoid those people coming up to you and breathing on you. No golden corral. That is the cost. That is the price of COVID. But and we can dream of the future, a better future,
with Golden Corral.
With Golden Corral and Cracker Barrel.
For those of you not knowing about Cracker Barrel, the patrons know about Cracker Barrel. Be a patron. Learn about Cracker Barrel. And our next co-host is the snazziest dressed of all of us. I've been trying to say his name on the audio-only podcast because he can't look at me with disgust on that. So I'm just going to call him by his nickname here. Deep State Cuba.
Hello, everyone. I was hoping that you'd give me an intro like you did with Gene, except instead of he's a professor, he's a father, he's a gamer, it would be like he's unpronounceable, he's not to be trusted. Everybody, it's Deep State Cuba.
I can't play up the villainous role for you because, number one, talking to you as much as we do, you are extremely helpful. The things you've done for the show to keep it going are, I won't say on air, it's extremely helpful. And I've got
a lot of karmic debt to repay.
Yes.
Coming from a torture facility somewhere in British Columbia, yeah.
So before we bring in our very esteemed guest, who has a very long resume and probably the most professional website I've seen so far of all the guests we've had, let us play the intro video for today's show to prepare us for the discussion.
The number of weekly unemployment claims in the United States dropped again today, and tomorrow we're expecting a clearer picture of what's happening with the job market. As more Americans get vaccinated, workers and companies are figuring out what post-pandemic work life will look like.
The pandemic has transformed the way we think about work and labor globally. In the U.S., many employees are unwilling to return to service jobs that underpay and provide limited benefits. In China, there is a recent phenomenon called lying flat, whereby young people refuse to partake in productive forces of the party and instead choose to settle for non-careerist but more relaxed lifestyles. At the same time, the pandemic has accelerated remote work that, for many employees, has also meant longer hours. In this episode, we engage with the politics of labor and what the pandemic means to us as workers, consumers, and citizens. This is Revolution.
For the hybrid choice, Bloom warns, there will be more unintended consequences.
If you look at people with a college degree that have kids 12 or under, women have almost 50% higher rate of preference to work from home 5 days a week than men. But that collides with the fact, and we see it over years of data, that if you're in the office, you're much more likely to get promoted than if you're working from home. So putting that together, you can see choice could easily lead to a situation whereby 5 years from now, let's say single young men come into the office every day, they're promoted up, they're in management. Women with young children choose not to come into the office nearly as many days in their health back.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that that cool video. And it took,
I gotta ask,
yes.
The Bezos rocket, did it have USA on it, or was it just like an Amazon smirk?
It is. I've been playing with special effects, so it actually is vintage footage of the 68 whatever that was called.
Apollo
4.
That's a good one.
A bunch of historians.
That was a pretty good video, and the Jeff Bezos rocket scene, excellent. Actually, I spoke to Maria earlier today, and she was also very impressed with the creepy Jeff Bezos rocket combination, which I really think fits the topic.
I went through several Bezos pictures, and I found that rocket footage. And I pay for that rocket footage, by the way. This is what fucking super chat money goes to, being able to pay for the footage for this shit. And I was very excited for that and the music that goes with it. So, well, let's bring in our esteemed guest. We met this wonderful woman through Jean Bajlan, and she has become a part of the Foreign Policy Thursdays. I believe she was on the first Foreign Policy Thursday, if I'm not mistaken.
I think she was quite the original guest on one of the originals.
So, also coming from a secret location that we're not allowed to say where, is the Maria Repnikova.
Oh, Maria, you're all happy, man.
It's the applause.
The applause, but everybody.
I'm just feeling entranced from that rocket video. You know, it puts me in a weird kind of, like a very hypnotic headspace. So
between looking up pictures of Jeff Bezos and then searching for smiley white people pictures, the image of the white guy throwing money, I couldn't stop laughing.
But the music is all Jason Miles. That's a Jason Miles original.
Oh, really? Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really
I
cool.
make all the music, and if you listen to the audio only podcast, because I figured no one listens all the way to the end, I always put original music at the end of the audio only podcast.
Wow, you rock, man. Very impressive.
He literally rocks. Like, you're not being facetious.
Yeah.
Why the background
Professionally.
earlier today.
Okay.
I'll stop with being silly, but I do have to say this. Earlier today, I heard someone refer to someone else as a rock star for like doing their job. You know how someone does their job and someone goes, "Oh man, thanks, you're a rock star." And my first reaction was, "Why are they a rock star? Were they doing blow off of a hooker's ass?"
Oh, so PC, man. Shout out for dropping the feminist views right off the bat.
Yeah, are we gonna get canceled, Jason?
I'm tweeting this to Esperanza. I'm not a rat. This is informing. It's my duty as a comrade.
Maria, people are asking you to turn up the volume.
I got her
And
mad.
no one's complaining
can you
about my
hear me better
audio.
now?
No,
Everyone else is too
Is
loud.
this,
we're
is this
all
better?
too loud.
Oh, maybe I froze. Okay.
Maria's like,
I see myself frozen. I'm
No, we
frozen
can
up.
see you.
I'm frozen up. I don't know.
"Oh,
what's
we
going
can
on.
see you. We can't.
Oh, you
we can't
can?
hear you
Oh,
as
okay.
well."
Oh, cool. Oh, you
Derek
can hear me
is
very well?
canceling us now because
It seems there's a slight delay. That's what it seems like.
There is a slight delay.
deep state, man.
Oh, okay.
The deep state is real.
Let me
It's
see.
kind of like a 1970s martial arts movie.
Could be Pegasus.
That's not.
It could be Pegasus.
That's not great.
Maria, you could.
I mean, Maria seems like the type who would get Pegasus.
If you just drop out and sign back in, that sometimes fixed. If you
Okay.
just log out and then jump back in on the
leave
same link,
Yeah.
leave and then come back. It should fix the problem.
Leave, Maria. Enough of Maria.
No,
This is men only. So,
Well, Jason is here, so it's
wow.
Wow.
That was a shot, man. It was a shot. It was just a shot.
Amplifying the toxic masculinity here.
I know. It was bad.
Somebody said there's no Proud Boy shirts today. That shit to me is still so fucking hilarious. Maria.
Hey,
Now
is it
you-
better?
Oh, say it again.
Oh,
The audio is on delay, but it is louder.
it's louder. Yeah,
okay.
we can do this.
We can do this. We can do this.
It's let me see. Well, I guess it's telling me I should switch to Google Chrome, but I've been anyways. I
Oh
don't know
yeah,
why it
you
was fine
switch to
before.
Google Chrome. Google Chrome is the way to go. But I'm afraid if you switch to Google Chrome, we all get an FBI file.
Oh, you imagine we don't already have
Okay.
one.
If I have an FBI file, I'd be kind of like there'd be a
Of course,
part
we have an FBI file. Kuba's the one who
Kuba's one that's
wrote
right.
them.
How do you think I found out about you guys?
He's the one who sent them the file.
It's
does the
very
copy editing.
complimentary. You know, I mentioned that you're great listeners, that you contribute in group discussions. You know, just like Stalin.
That's a great summary.
Poor Maria is so delayed.
Oh no.
We can hear
It's
you.
not gonna work.
The delay is almost. It is like a 70s kung fu film, as Pascal said earlier. So FBI
it's not the
files
best.
aside, I want to ask Pascal, when we were pitching this idea to do a show about the COVID economy, and I know you read those articles about the laying flat phenomenon in China.
Tang Ping.
What did you just call me?
Tang. I believe the phenomenon is called Tang Ping.
Did he say it right? Chinese speakers?
It's Tang Ping.
Yeah.
That's it? Tang Ping?
I think you called someone's
Yeah,
mother
not Tang Ping.
Tang Ping.
All right,
Yeah.
man, I tried, man. Do I get an A for effort or something?
No, because you guys give me shit. So no. Tong Ping.
You get a pass, but only if you give
Here, I can
Jason
even-
one on the next French word he butchers.
I can show you how it's written. Look.
Oh yeah, see, so Maria,
of course,
Tang, laying flat is such a phenomenon. They're monetizing it by selling cute, adorable shirts. What was your first, like, all
actually,
seriousness?
my friend Nadia got it.
Oh, Nadia Kravitz.
You can't be saying.
Yeah, she got me this shirt, and she's listening right now. So,
Pascal,
yeah,
what was your first impression when you read about the laying flat phenomenon?
Well, when I read the articles, I read the New York Times article, and I read, I think, one or two more about the phenomenon. I think that in light of the fact that the Chinese youth had such a work expectation put on them socially and culturally by the government and the state, the thing that I found fascinating is that what's motivating the phenomenon is the belief that they will not be able to live the same quality of life as their parents. And I started to reflect on, well, what does that say about, the American millennial generation that has been, basically making the same statements about the inability to live the quality of life of their parents or older generations, and how people use their affection for socialism as a means to call them slackers, lazy, so on and so forth. But if China is already marketed as a socialist country, what is going to be the means to use to shame them to get back to the to the coal mines, if you will?
Literal coal mines.
The literal coal mines, I guess, since they're already a socialist country. So that was one of the things I thought about. But one of my questions I had about it is that I don't necessarily think that this is particularly just a Chinese phenomenon. Could this be really a product of have we reached the kind of with the technological development of the modern age, all of this, we hear AI, blah blah blah, et cetera, and so forth, and peak neoliberalism and all of that. Are people burnt out? Are young people realizing that it's really the whole go to work 60 hours a week, get married, 2.5 kids, get a mortgage, and work till you die? Is this a hustle, a scam? It wasn't worth it in the first place. Is this a global reality? Not so much just in China, but everywhere. Is it tied to the 2008 crash? Is it tied to the post-COVID economy? Or is it just a generational thing, or all of the above?
And before you guys answer, I want to read this quote to add to whatever you guys are going to say. The decline in market wages for less educated workers is also no doubt part of the story because of market forces like digital technologies and globalization, as well as weakening institutions like unions. Market wages for less educated workers have declined, especially relative to the more educated. As a result, working has become less attractive, and many less educated individuals have chosen to supply less labor to the market response. That was from a Stanford study in 2019 on inequality.
What are your thoughts, Maria?
Can everyone hear me?
Well, we can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So first of all, when I was researching for this show, I found that in Japan, they have a very similar but even more provocative phenomena called hikakamori, which means that people not only quit their work, but they never leave their apartments. So I just thought it was fascinating how differently this whole idea of quitting, it manifests itself that, like in China, they're lying flat, right, so to speak. They might be doing different jobs, but not working fully in a competitive kind of economy. But in Japan, some of these individuals, they just don't leave their room or the house. They just disengage from society. So I just think it's interesting how different forms this kind of idea of rebellion is, and to what extent is it productive rebellion, to what extent is it just kind of hiding from reality. Some analysis of the lying flat phenomena suggests it's just not that effective because in the end, first of all, it got censored. The government censored it. So you can't discuss this anymore because it's too sensitive in China. But also it's a relatively small group, right? Most young people are still consuming, they're still, shopping, they're working, they're still kind of buying into this whole highly capitalist mantra. So how effective is this? But it's really fascinating just how different people choose how to quit or how to avoid being part of this big stream, which is so powerful. So that's something that struck me as I was, thinking about this.
How much is technology facilitating this? being online, if you will, having Zoom, internet. I mean, could this be possible in a pre-internet world? Is what I'm asking.
Well, I think that.
You mean to quit or to keep working?
The whole lying down, quitting, kind of staying in your apartment.
Oh, okay. It's maybe even easier, you just kind of log off the world.
Well, I think that there's two pieces to this. One is that the international economy is extraordinarily productive, and a lot of jobs in developed economies are frankly bullshit. They are not necessary for any productive purposes. Many are entirely destructive. The American health insurance industry, for instance, or pharmaceutical marketing, right? The people who bribe doctors to hand out more painkiller, more opioid prescriptions. So the proportion of the workforce in advanced countries that actually need to contribute their labor to keep the system going, to keep everybody fed, to keep the bridges from collapsing, et cetera, it's going to be a small fraction of the actual workforce. And this enables you to quit, right? The economy is productive enough so that your labor is not necessary to keep the thing going. We're not talking about a village in the Middle Ages where everybody needs to plant wheat or you're going to die. And the labor that is put into the economy is a lot of things that are necessary aren't even being done. So why kill yourself trying to get in? And that's another thing. The barriers for young people to enter careers that could pay off in 5 or 6 years with meaningful work and responsibility are exhausting. And you have to deal with a great deal of rejection, humiliation, and exploitation to even get to the kind of career that your parents might have been able to achieve. Professorships, for instance. It takes a lot of education to even compete, but they consistently degrade the currency. They debase the work more and more and more. So you're competing viciously for scraps. And I think there's a rational decision made by a lot of young people that between the intergenerational transfers that they can get from their parents, whatever they can scrape by in occasional labor in the service industry, you can do as well as you're gonna. So why bother with a conventional, debilitating, uncertain career?
How does that translate in terms of the way in which these people are going to find compensation? In other words, is there a class component here? Is this a luxury of kids who have some, trust fund benefits that they can live off, or they can inherit some money from their parents? What about the more, working class proletariat types of these societies who might not have those kind of luxuries?
Here, I think varieties of capitalism matter tremendously, and this is why the case of Japan and the hikikomori is so interesting. So it's one thing with the lying flat. You might be dropping out of the economy, but you're not dropping out of society necessarily. The hikikomori is doing both, although there are cases where being online allows some of them to actually have a career and a sizable income from their own home, right? Like writing anime reviews or day trading or doing other kind of work that doesn't involve belonging to a conventional organization. There's hikikomori multimillionaires. And if you have a legacy of a sizable middle class, meaning that the young people today have parents that own their own homes, that have savings, that have a stable retirement income, and that is 60% of the population, not everybody, but a substantial amount. then it's that type of dropping out is much more available and much less punishing. If you have European style welfare states, then again, they exclude certain groups, but it's a much easier thing to do than in hyper competitive, brutally unforgiving economies like the United States, where it's work or starve. There, the class element is central. Although there is a geographic distribution where the lower the living costs, the less labor that you'll need to put in compared to the most expensive cities where, rent for a shared room is just, that's 60 hours of your week every week.
So does this mean that traditional concepts like marriage, family life, etc., are they becoming just bypassed or just given up by this generation? Or are they being delayed? Is it considered something that's just not even an attractive option anymore?
Well, it's in the case of this lying flat phenomenon in China, marriage also came up, and having kids. Recently the party has announced that it's possible and even advisable to have 3 kids. So it started with just 1 kid restriction. Now it's 2 kids, and very quickly it's 3 children. So it's kind of like expansion of family, because there are so many old people that need care, and the social safety net in China is actually very weak. So it appears to be socialist, but it's actually not at all, right, in terms of social benefits. So many people are refusing to have kids. They're unable to, they're exhausted. And I think as part of this lying flat, one of the things they're saying is that, they don't want to enter into traditional sort of marriage relationships, to have children. They want to live kind of for themselves, maybe within a community, and to enjoy a slower pace of life. And that means for many of them, I think, abandoning the idea of having children because it's just too expensive. And recently also many young people started to join the party. Kind of a big flow of young graduates from elite schools has been joining the party for social benefits, not necessarily kind of that they maybe love the party, but they want to join to get benefits for their kids. So they kind of try to find ways to integrate into the society, or to avoid this idea of having traditional family altogether. I mean, there's the idea of hiring a boyfriend to show off to a family, or hiring a fake husband. So there are all kinds of interesting dealers and businesses that emerge in the shadow economy to try to kind of fit in without actually doing the work of fitting in. So it's really fascinating. But I think marriage and all its traditional norms are also being questioned as part of this.
And I think that
sorry, Kuba.
Just very quickly, for viewers that don't have a lot of context for Asian type marriage, those can be extraordinarily burdensome, especially on women, in terms of placating in-laws, of the amount of service and elder care that you're expected to provide in your free time, and the deference that's associated with a more patriarchal notion of family arrangements. And that's changing, but it's still a consideration that especially young women have when they are facing the prospect of, do I want to become a wife with all the baggage that entails?
I would add to this like one point, and I'd like to ask also Maria her thoughts on this as well. In terms of if we look at this trend of lying down in China, obviously there are a lot of parallels to things that are going on in Europe and the United States in terms of the kind of stereotype of the millennial living at home or coming back home, and also as Kuba has pointed out. And and I think it's much more difficult for young people to obtain good middle class jobs, but also good working class jobs. Remember, in the 1950s and 60s, if you were a white man, there was an opportunity to, have a job in a traditional working class profession, working in a factory, and that could give you a good living. Nowadays, the social compact of one generation passing off better opportunities to the next generation seems to have broken down. And I would say two really important trends, have made this very clear. Is obviously the 2008 economic crisis in the first place, restricting those opportunities in such a direct way. And secondly, COVID, in the sense that a lot of people who are working rat race jobs, a lot of hours for very little compensation, are now hesitant to go back into the workforce if they can muddle together enough money to survive. People are reprioritizing. America in particular has this kind of Protestant ethic culture that it likes to make a big deal out of, that sort of glorifies working yourself to death. But I think a lot of people, especially during this kind of enforced break people had over COVID, are beginning to reassess their priorities. And I wonder, and this is what I wanted to ask Maria, although this is kind of parallel or like analogous to the lying down phenomena in China, I mean, would you think that one of the big differences, though, that in American capitalism, there's no national project. There's a kind of national malaise in terms of what is the point of all this, right? People are questioning the system. People are not happy in the system. Whereas in China, although it might be a minority of people who sort of have that similar kind of feeling, there is still a strong national development project taking place in China that has, and there have been successes of the Chinese government in eradicating absolute poverty. So there's still considerable buy-in that, if I work hard, I'm working for a project bigger than myself. Whereas American individualism, kind of precludes that to a certain degree. And since the opportunities aren't there for Americans, people are focusing on themselves and been like, well, why should I work myself to the bone? I'm going to work less, and I'm going to like scrape by with some money from mom and dad and, maybe a little bit of part-time job, but I'm going to focus on me. I mean, what do you think of that broader political context and how it shapes that phenomenon, Maria?
Yeah, I think that's a great question in terms of what this, what this work ethic and what is all this for, right? Because is there some national kind of goal or is it all individual? I think in China, it's kind of both. On the one hand, there is the bigger national project, right? And I think that's something that propaganda is very much hard at work as well. With recently, the party turned 100 years old, and they're promising to live for another 100 years. So they already have a future-oriented kind of vision that, it's at least 100 years, maybe it's going to be 200 years old. And the idea is to keep rejuvenating, right, the Chinese nation, accomplishing more and more domestically. And eradication of poverty has been one of those really big symbolic not just symbolic, it's an actual accomplishment for many people of that generation, but also it's symbolic in terms of just how much it's been, talked about and how it's seen by Chinese youth in addition to older people. So I think there is a sense that it's part of something bigger, but at the same time, the work pressures are so immense. I think, I don't know which ones are more immense in China or the US, but this idea of 996, working until 9 p.m., like 6 days a week for many of these jobs. When I was back in China, 2 years ago for my research, I've met many journalists and other young people, young professionals who are just simply completely exhausted. I mean, they're taking the subway at 11 p.m. from their job. They're ordering food in. They're living in this kind of high-tech economy, but they have no time for anything. No social life, no relationships, no cooking, none of the kind of enjoyable everyday things. So I think there is kind of a tension, I think, for young people. To what extent is it worth it? Like, what is this bigger goal if my life is completely reduced to work? So I think that maybe is an overlap with, what some Americans are feeling.
Well, I actually want to juxtapose this phenomenon of the Chinese laying down and the phenomenon that you talk about in terms of Japan and the global phenomenon in America with something that I've been seeing as well. I don't know if you're familiar with the rise of what they call, quote unquote, hustle culture. Hustle culture is something that you're seeing, particularly with kind of like right-wing libertarian type of online media spaces that are trying to give you this kind of push you into this like work to become like the super alpha male type,
Jordan Peterson meets the market.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you guys have seen these types of these characters. I was watching a regional podcast that was talking about how this kind of hustle culture is being pushed heavily. I don't know if it's really kind of an attempt to counteract the phenomenon we're discussing, but I definitely see it. I definitely see it, particularly in like hip hop spaces with a certain type of kind of like black capitalism. It's also appealing, like in this whole conversation around getting people into the investment market, like Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, Robinhood. It's like you can make money, so on and so forth. And I was just wondering, like, what do you guys make of that? Have you noticed it? Is it a counter reaction to the phenomenon we're discussing here?
No, I mean, I don't know if you guys read all those papers I sent you from that Stanford study. It was actually kind of long. I didn't want to bombard you guys with the whole thing hella last minute. But a lot of it actually did talk about the fact that non-college educated males are faced with the reality that the job market that might have been there for their parents aren't there for them. So a lot of this hustle culture narrative starts to sound a lot better, because what do you have in the real world? We're fighting to have $15 an hour be a minimum wage that still isn't a living wage in most cities. And that's the fight. The fight is not even to have a living wage. It's to be at a bare minimum so you kind of sort of don't starve. The amount of people that are on, some sort of government assistance is a higher percentage than most people think. And we're talking like food stamps.
Disability. That's a big one.
Disability was huge. So I'll shut up now. Sorry.
I think that to pick up on something that Maria and Pascal both mentioned, the Chinese economy is still tied to this developmental program for the country, a part of national mission. But the mission and what you're actually doing have become alienated. So you're making some app some game and your job is to figure out how to maximize the revenue that you're squeezing out of the players when they download it on WeChat. And in your mind that this is not developing China. This is not making the country great. This is not making us compete. This is just finding a revenue stream that I'm not even drinking from. It's all getting kicked upstairs. And I have no leverage because there's 10 million people like me that I'm replaceable. So this is a game that I'm bound to lose. But at least there's a sense that in China, there's a collective national program, a project to build the future, and some people get to be part of it. And the Chinese Communist Party also recognizes that it has a duty to provide that kind of mission, the Chinese dream, or have a leadership where China builds the future. In the United States hasn't built the future since, I don't know, maybe the space race, right? Right now, the future is being built in the United States, but it's being built by Jeff Bezos. It's being built by Google. It's being built by Mark Zuckerberg. And if you look at the employee culture of these peak firms, there's a lot of people that are deeply dedicated, and a lot of people that would want to join because they feel like what they're doing has a tangible impact on the world. I'm not saying they're right, but they feel like their work matters, and their work is decently compensated, even if the conditions can be quite grueling. However, especially if you're male, young, no college, there's nothing like that for you. And many of the jobs that you could do in your community have been exported, automated, outsourced, and that leads to a feeling of uselessness, that an enemy, and it makes you extraordinarily unattractive as a mate. And I think that right now we're seeing some second and third order effects in those material conditions playing out in things like plummeting birth rates, the opioid crisis, and the availability of large numbers of angry young men for protest movements across the political spectrum.
So is it safe to say that we can root all of this in political economy and the post-2008 crisis of capitalism and its various iterations in terms of how it's actually affecting the socialization and acculturation of members of society? Or is it something deeper that goes into the overall mores, values of our society overall? Or is this really just a factor coming to the realization that this particular, period of what I guess some people call late stage capitalism is ineffective at meeting the material needs of large segments of society, even some of those that are college educated?
I think that political economy is, if you're going to throw in technology into political economy, that's enough to explain the larger movement or the structure. But the mores and the existing cultural notions that get inherited, that exist at the time the crisis manifests itself, pattern how people respond to it. In Japan, for instance, the hikikomori thing comes about because Japanese culture socially is extraordinarily demanding, and dropping out of it entirely is kind of the only way you're going to get any peace. So it's not something that you see elsewhere on the same scale or to the same extent. While in the United States, the mass shooting culture, that's also something that's distinctive, even if the roots of the anomie that provoke it are political economic.
What are your thoughts, Maria?
Well, I was just caught by the chat on the right side that was, I think, calling me kind of complicit in something. So I was just a little, distracted by the complicity argument, academics complicit in different institutions and all that. So I just wanted to highlight that my research is, the research I do is on my own. So it's an independent research, but I am here in DC this year. And I guess I'm a little bit complicit by being part of the DC think tank culture for the past year, which I've learned a lot about, but I'm not actually a permanent employee. I'm a fellow. So just to bring up some, clarification there. But I think in terms of what Pascal mentioned with material needs, I think it's not just material needs, it's also, I think, spiritual needs and just emotional needs. It's not only money, right? It's also like, what is this kind of lifestyle that's so baked in just basically work for the sake of work? What does it actually yield? And one of the stories I really liked from the lying down phenomena was one of the guys who started it. He was a factory worker, and when he quit, speaking of class issues, right? He wasn't actually wealthy, so he didn't have any kind of hedge fund parents. He quit and he ended up moving to a very small town, I think somewhere maybe on the mountain. And he works different little jobs, just enough to survive, but he reads philosophy and he works out in his spare time. So basically he found his way to kind of fulfilling, I think, emotional, physical needs, not only material needs. So I think there's also kind of a distinction, like, do you need all this material well-being to be more happy, right? So I think that's where the questioning comes in for some of these people. And some of them come from backgrounds where they didn't have a choice. They didn't have a chance to educate themselves, to read, to enjoy life. And now they're choosing a more modest way of living materially, but a more rich way to live, spiritually and intellectually. So I think that's also something that struck me from these characters. I was quite inspired by them, the way that they choose to live their life and the way that they kind of make those compromises.
I found a quote from one of the suggested readings that you sent us, Maria. And this was towards the end. I don't know if you guys all read this. Adherence to the principle of productivity, therefore, threatens public health as the planet. Actually, these are the same thing. By committing us to what is impossible, it makes for madness. The Nobel Prize winning economist Angus Deaton said something like this when he explained anomalous morality rates among white people in the Bible Belt by claiming that they've lost the narrative of their lives, by suggesting that they've lost faith in the American dream. For them, the work ethic is a death sentence because they can't live by it. So the impending end of work raises the most fundamental questions about what it means to be human.
I mean, I'm not trying to get all existential on everyone here, but can we have a little discussion about perhaps the nature of this Calvinist Protestant work ethic? You are what you make, or you are what you work, and have a little debate on, is this really like an intrinsically healthy way for one to view oneself as a human being?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things I got from the readings we had beforehand, and the kind of idea for this show was it is a question of political economy, but it's also a question of, like Maria says, people reacting against the system in terms of understanding that the ideology that they've been fed, which there's obviously religious roots to this kind of Calvinistic point of view about that. You work and you work, and but it's secularized. It's seen as a moral good. I remember George W. Bush was taking questions at a town hall, and a woman said, "Oh, I have to work 3 jobs in order to make ends meet." And George Bush goes, "There's nothing more American than that," right? So, like, I think what's fascinating about COVID forced many people to take hiatuses from work. And in taking those hiatus, if you were not ill and if you had a little bit of means to survive, it meant you could reassess the priorities in your life. And I think that people aren't just like automatons and machines, which is what capitalism often reduces us to, the appendages of machines, right? But people are like really beginning to see that making money is not the be all end all. There are other very important commodities, including time, that and mental health, that people are that are coming into focus here. And yeah, I think that's sort of the desire to have like a little bit more meaning to your life than just work. And people people attack the millennials for that, but it's actually it's a kind of, I think it's a psychologically healthy thing, because I think I see it in myself. I'm sure Maria would say the same thing in academia, because of the rat race nature and the highly competitive nature of academia. And you could apply this to any other kind of profession. You have to work in your job, and then in your time off, you have to do more work. You work too. Yeah, your time off is when you tell, this is not a joke, in academia, and Maria, back me up on this. The thing people will say when the summer holiday comes around, it's like, "Oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to the summer. I can finally get some work done."
I mean, people are working all the time, like even weekends. Like, I mean, afraid to take weekends off. You're like, "Oh my God, I missed out on work."
I had some writing time I could have done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I haven't written my number of words or whatever. So
I think that, and the truth is that the hippies had the exact same epiphany. The generation of the 1960s in the United States, and not just the United States, but kind of Western economies more generally, recognized the implications of following the same career trajectory as their post-war parents. And many of them, I'm not saying everybody, it wasn't universal, but it was substantial enough to move the culture that they put other values ahead of participation in capitalist careerism. And I think that it is psychologically healthy to consider what the value of your time is, and what pursuits you could be applying it to, other than just accumulating. I mean, we're not even talking about capital. We're talking about means to survive in a lot of cases. But I think that it also, the reason that it's so sticky is that it's tied into a particular cosmodicy, if you will, like a particular way of justifying the goodness and the justice of the world. That if you work hard, good things will happen to you. If you don't work hard, bad things will happen to you. People who have bad things happen in their lives didn't work hard, therefore they deserve them. And the good things that I get are a result of my hard work, therefore I deserve them. Therefore the world is just, I can sleep at night. And that is a source of tremendous comfort and self-esteem for a lot of people who have made it, who are middle class, who are the parents of the downwardly mobile college grads that are struggling now, who frame policy, who structure the world that everybody else has to inhabit. And for them to, Except the reevaluation of that kind of work ethic means questioning their framework for believing that their world is good and correct and their place in it is proper. And that's a lot to ask of someone.
I was watching an episode of The Cosby Show recently. I don't know if that's bad, but it was the episode where Bill Cosby was, towards the end of the show, the Theo character became a teacher at a youth center, and it was like a men's day. And this is kind of when Cosby is hitting his stride with his respectability politics. And I don't know if you remember this episode, Pascal, but it was the episode where he's telling the kids they can kind of do anything they want to do. And when the kids goes, "That's easy for you to say, you're a doctor." And Bill Cosby, goes, "Hey, we're not talking about me. We're talking about you." And the joke in that is, well, yeah, you're also from a family, in the Cosby Show, Bill Cosby's supposed to come from like generations of college
educated family
that lived like this great life. His kids have never had to work an extra job for school. On the show, his kids never, where the money comes from for school is never an issue, actually.
That is correct. Well, here's
I wanted to just follow on one point from Kuba. It's I think the important thing is, we have this like cosmological notion that you work hard, you get rewarded for your hard work, but that is increasingly an unsustainable idea. Now, of course, there are people who still present that idea, the hustle culture kind of people and things like that. But I think Max Weber has a quote where he says, a fortunate man is seldom satisfied with the fact that he's fortunate. He basically needs to legitimize his fortune. So, the rich in America like to present themselves as working hard, whereas it seems to be that it's not like there ever was a correlation between hard work and the amount of wealth and money you had, obviously. But it seems that in the United States specifically, there was a period in time where at least a generation felt that I might not be able to summer in Cancun every year, but I can work hard and build a life for myself. And that is something that is increasingly inaccessible to not only working class people, but also the downwardly mobile children of the American bourgeoisie.
And to make one observation about the elite, Veblen described a leisure class, and when you go to Europe or Asia, you do meet people who are heirs or heiresses and who just go to social registry stuff. But especially the PMC in the United States, but even the heirs and heiresses in the United States, everybody believes that they're working 80 hours, 100 hours a week, investment banker hours, and therefore they're rich and they work hard. There's that correlation. There's that link. And I would hasten to point out that a lot of the work that they do, they just shouldn't, because it just makes the world a worse place. We'd be better off if they would just like chill out and not do any of that. I'm especially thinking of high finance, like the people who create mortgage-backed securities, maybe take a day off, but that link in their minds, I hustle, I work 100 hours, even if 40 of those are just sending emails on my devices, convinces them that that link is still real, and that their wealth is the result of a work ethic virtue.
Maria, you said there's a question you wanted to address about what?
There was a question about government's reactions, and I think that maybe all of us can comment a bit. To what extent, I guess I tried to say this earlier, to what extent are some of these movements, alternative movements of quitting, lying down, locking yourself in your room, doing some alternative work, not contributing to this productive economy, like, does it have much of an effect on the wider society, or is it just kind of an isolated, narrow phenomena that just sort of, like Kuba said, it's kind of like doesn't affect the bigger flow. So it's kind of okay, but it's not really affecting or changing how we work overall. So, in terms of government's reactions, I mean, I think in the case of China, the government reactions, as I said, was pretty severe. They basically censored it. And there were not only censorship policies, but also propagandistic articles came out in Chinese media saying that this movement is really, it's really bad. It's really lazy. So people have to get up and work, right? Like
sabotage.
Yeah, it's sabotage. You have to go work. It's all about being part of this big movement. Again, what, Jean said, the bigger project, right? You're not part of it. Like, what are you doing here? So the reaction was actually quite sensitive. So there were a lot of articles coming out in media, official media and social media. And in addition to that, the group leaders of Lying Down were censored. And of course, they reacted with some, cynicism that, the big brother is watching us so much, you can't even lie down, So there were all kinds of funny comments back. But I think the movement itself kind of went underground and sort of marginalized. So I don't know how it is in Japan or, other places, but it's just interesting to think about these reactions. Of course, China is a highly authoritarian state with a lot of power to censor the media. So it's a unique kind of situation.
And there's a communist version of the of the same work ethic that we're talking about, like the Stakhanovite notion of, heroes of labor, over fulfilling quotas, that kind of thing.
And that came up pandemic, right? I mean, they showed off all these nurses and delivery workers, all these gig economy workers as being the heroes of the kind of the rising China beating the virus.
And they're not wrong, right? That was a case where that was a case where the labor contribution was extraordinarily valuable and did have a tangible impact on the welfare of other people. And but I think in the West, 1968 gave us sympathy for dropouts, hippies, and like protesters. And I think that stuck around, even in Japan. Like there's this notion that there's this class of free-spirited young people or withdrawn introverts, and that's okay. It's not great, but it's also not sabotage.
I think the 50-year counter-revolution did a very good job of neutralizing any type of appreciation we had for hippie culture. Immediately look at Nixon and his embrace of the hard hats. Look at the way in which Reaganism embraces what they call the Reagan Democrats, and the way in which the working class gets shifted away from the New Deal Democratic coalition of the 60s and gets subsumed into the Republican right. So I think in many ways that kind of tolerance for hippie culture actually was very quickly eradicated and replaced with the this kind of neoliberal. I remember particularly in the 90s in the Clinton era, entrepreneurialism, particularly in the rise of the internet, was a big thing. Everyone wanted to be an internet millionaire, and I think to an extent that as someone moved on to today, what's fascinating to me, right, is that we're talking about these people who don't want to work, and someone keeps mentioning this in the chat, and I think it's valuable, is that what does that mean for a left that's based on empowering labor and labor unions when nobody wants to work anymore?
Right.
I think
maybe the part of the problem of the left is a fetishization of labor.
I think I would just sort of add to what Pascal said. I think in America there is a kind of cultural rejection of people who don't work, and I think in the 1980s with the welfare cream, but also with this COVID crisis, we're still in kind of crisis conditions. Yet at least the right wing of American politics is so keen to force people back to work because there is a kind of notion that people are lazy, that people are getting the $300 extra so that they won't work. This huge war against entitlements, or what they call entitlements and social welfare in the United States, is predicated on the notion that people need to get their asses to work. Otherwise, they're going to be in trouble. I think it's a different ideological constellation to the system that exists in the sort of ideological superstructure that prevails in China, perhaps. But I think the function is similar in that there is a notion that if you're on welfare, you're lazy, right? You could be working 60 hours a week, and as you know, as you pointed out, Jason, $15 an hour is not going to. You're not even getting $15 an hour in many places. You could be working all these hours and still be on still need welfare, but you're still wasted.
Walmart tells you if you're working for them how to sign up for food stamps and other aid because they know they're not paying you enough.
Yeah, so it's. I think there is a kind of, and I think the reaction has become strong because a bunch of people during the COVID crisis, as soon as the labor market, as soon as things began opening up, people were like, you know what, I can live a little bit longer. I can focus on my kids, right? Because that's another thing. Like, we don't live in huge extended families where grandma looks after the kids anymore. That's like not common. So if you have kids, you have to focus on your kids. If you have like other commitments, elderly parents. So people have been focusing on a lot of other things. And what's the response? Immediately bring out the beating stick to force people back into the labor market. Like take away.
Well, hold on. Hold on. I'm going to stop this conversation right here because you guys are getting all fired up and I'm enjoying what we're talking about. But there's a reason why we cut this at an hour. Isn't that right, Pascal?
That's correct.
Thank you very much, Maria. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but will you be able to join us in the bonus half of the show?
Sure.
Oh, shit. Kuba, will you be able to join us?
Try to stop me.
Well, Kuba is hardcore. He's like a tank.
I'm the Stakhanovite of podcasters.
Yeah, you're
He's
really
a tank, but not a tanky.
No, I'm tanky.
See, Maria just said she's a tanky. There you go, everybody that questioned her.
Shout out to Maria.
Her left credentials. She just called it. She lets you know.
I might as well take the spies and just put them in my chest. You know what I mean?
I just want to, before we go, just remind people that this crew of wonderful individuals has merchandise, and we do drop new stuff. I would say probably every month. So here you go. We got this a little warm for these. We also have t-shirts with the original show logo. That was the original show logo right there for This Is Revolution. We got hats, motherfucker.
How come you don't send me a hat?
Well, you didn't ask, first of all.
I don't have a hat.
Yeah, nobody has a hat.
Gene, did you get a hat?
No,
I didn't get a hat.
Yeah.
No, none of you got anything.
I mean, the hoodie looks cool too,
Right?
The hoodie does look cool.
Does that shit look kind of dope?
Yeah.
It looks like it looks like you could go do a black block operation.
I'm about to say it's total anarchist wear, man. It's total.
Looks like a good hoodie for the first class.
It's anarchist friendly. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, Antifa. All right.
Antifa friendly.
It's been Antifa approved. We're going to get some
sponsorships from Soros. Yeah, George Soros Antifa money, right?
You didn't know that George Soros paid for these things to get done? This is all funded with George Soros money.
Someone was trying to tell me. Someone was trying to tell me the other day.
Tell me my cut.
Yeah. Someone was trying to tell me the other day that like all these left-wing podcasts get money from George Soros, and I was like, bro, where do we sign up for the Soros money?
Where is the link?
Where can we get George Soros money to do this shit? Because it's very, very expensive. And
Gene, I'm curious, who was telling you that?
It was a guy in the Dungeons and Dragons shop.
Some fucking
in the nerd shop. He was like, oh, they all get money from George Soros. I was like, man, I'm pretty sure that's not the case. It's like, no, they all get money from George Soros. I was like, although it's true that George. I mean, who was it you guys were talking about? Van Jones got some.
Van Jones got a fucking. My mom texted me to tell me that Van Jones got a bunch of money.
$100 million.
I wanted to know if he was going to cry over that.
$100 million for FBI informant Van Jones.
Is Van an FBI informant?
You've heard
I
the
mean-
stories from Dylan Rodriguez and another guest that shall not be named.
All I'm saying, Gene, is
90s.
that is eligible for a liable statement.
The mugs are only
Allegedly.
the mugs are
Alleged by Gene.
Alleged. It's I've been people are saying it. People
That
people
works.
are saying
That
it.
some
works.
say.
Yeah. People are saying it.
If you
Everybody's saying, I hear about this
Is
guy.
it true
Van
that is it true
Jones.
that Al Sharpton informed to the FBI? Somebody
Al
told me that.
Sharpton was an FBI informant. Yes.
But like,
Al
seriously,
Sharpton-
you tell a secret to anybody that looked like that with a perm. If you have a perm, I'm not telling you any secrets. Sorry.
Somebody, because I had a friend who used to always say FBI informant Al Sharpton. I was like, is he actually an FBI? It's like,
Yes, he is CI number 7, certified
Yeah.
informant number 7. Al Sharpton.
Yeah, that's like not a
okay,
joke.
fair enough.
He's got
I
a
was just- I
perm.
was kidding.
He's got a perm. He still has a perm.
James Brown had a perm. You think-
And he took that shit
Yeah.
out. He didn't do Black and Proud with a perm.
Only for that
He
song.
was perm
When-
free.
What's the deadline on the perm?
If you have a perm after 1968, you might be an informant or a real gangster.
What's his name? Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes. What was the singer from
Isaac Hayes
California?
went bald.
Not Isaac
Why?
Hayes. The other one. The big chunky one.
Oh, what is that, brother? I can't think of his name right now. Why can't we think of everybody? Barry White.
Barry White.
Oh.
He had a perm to the
Yeah, get a
end.
perm. Get a
But
perm.
the villain, the like bad romantic rival in Coming to America, he had a perm.
Don't trust a motherfucker with a curl. If you got a curl, if a dude has a curl right now, don't trust him.
And on that note,
And on that,
everybody like and subscribe.
Leave a
And-
comment.
Leave a comment, and if you feel inclined, join the Patreon
and
where you can hear all about Cracker Barrel.
and if you have perm stories or curl stories, let us know.
Next time we'll wear hats, all of us. Yeah.
We got hats, motherfucker.
Yeah, well, if you get the hats out to